Welcome back, Radio 2. I hope you've been listening to a lot of radio and that you've been working on your formative assessment. So from the previous lesson, what we have done is we ended up the previous lesson by looking at a link planning template. We ended off the previous lesson with a lot of tips and ideas and techniques around how to structure a link. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at show prep. Okay, show preparation, which is extremely important and is something that is important not only to presenters, but to producers also. And it's also something that's important to your program manager. And yes, show prep can be a daunting task, and it is something that can take hours of meticulous planning and dedication in order to be able to obtain the best content output. But this is where planning comes in, okay? So if we go to the slides for today, we'll be looking at page 129 up until page 138 in Next Level Radio. So Randy Lane says, planning is the key to more quality entertainment, spontaneity, chemistry, creativity, and consistency. Successful broadcasters are ferocious planners that are simultaneously able to be spontaneous with confidence. So Lane proposes the following guidelines that can be followed during the preparation phase. Plan for all segments beforehand, hold weekly planning and brainstorming meetings, plan to insert the character and personalities into everything you prepare, and build links with the P2 listener in mind. And we'll get to that, to what the P2 listener is later on, okay? So this class will be split over 2 lectures, purely because of the amount of information that I'm going to be providing you with today. So if we look at how you should be preparing for a show, start with plan all the segments beforehand. So in our previous lesson, we spoke about how important it is to have a solid plan for the show, taking into account the hour, the content type for that hour, and the format of your links. So now is where we're going to start filling that link with the actual content. For this, we're going to use a planning sheet, okay, to help us with this process. Also, it'll make it a little bit less daunting for you. The planning sheet starts with a reminder of the execution rule of 4. The planning out these 4 rules is the cornerstone of any great piece of content. And if we look back at what this rule of 4 is, the rule of 4 is the hook, payoff, point of view, and anything else. So if we look at the hook, how are we going to set it up to engage the audience within 10 or actually 8 or even less seconds before they tune away? What specific words will we use to create the maximum impact? For the payoff, what is our intention? Do we want humor, conflict, emotions? What are we trying to do? Where are we going to go with this link? How do we want the listener to feel? How will we get out of it? Know the out before you begin, okay? If a good exit comes up spontaneously during the segment, go with that instead. Always know your out. Point of view. What is each cast member's point of view on the topic? Can you share a relatable story of a personal experience? What emotions can you express? What are the thoughts in your head? What is your opinion? Okay, what is your opinion? What else? Ask, what else can we do to make it bigger? For example, introduce an expert or a guest, production piece, a conflict or controversy, a story, a stunt, a viral video or media coverage, etc. Okay? Recognize what content could be bigger and what content is perfect as it is. From the answers of these questions now, okay, all of these questions, we're able to create the link planning sheet, which will look like this. So this is the start of a link planning sheet. This is the rest of it, okay? The second one, there is simply the link sheet. So link planning sheet, end of link planning sheet, and then link sheet. So there you can see the story summary. Emotivity, so write down exactly what emotion, write down the exact emotion you feel about the topic. Then write the emotion you wish to evoke by telling the story, okay? The promise. So do you remember from the previous lesson, we spoke about the promise as being one of the two links. And then we spoke about, what was the other one? The performance. So, okay, so your promise. Script the exact promise or tease, okay? We also said it's a tease. And then the hook. Write what you will say in the first 10 seconds to capture the attention for the segment. 10 seconds max, okay? Then the point of view, a personal story of your own that relates to this topic. So a story that you heard about the topic, or what thoughts you had in your head, what opinions do you have? And then it's your payoff or punchline. What is the resolution? How will this link end? So that's your rule of 4. And then what else? What else can we do to make it bigger and add more layers? What will make it go viral, shareable, and into a did you hear that moment? Okay, so then you write it there. So here you just write all your stuff on all sides. So you just answer all of the questions, okay? And then once the above is filled out, once you filled out this whole planning sheet, it can now be documented into the 4 parts of the actual link as follows. So you'll start with the type of link, the promise, the hook, the setup, the payoff. What type of link do we have? Character stories and storylines, serialized content, out of studio, so for example, Vox Pops, you know, those voiceover pieces. Listener games or features or promotions, guest interviews, phone topics, for example, interactions, produced sketches, parodies. Is it a holiday? So Christmas content, events, concerts, something new and buzzworthy, video and viral pieces, either created or found or other. These you would have seen before because we've looked at all of these in detail before, okay, in one of our previous lessons. And then you fill in your promise, hook, setup, and payoff. Every link, regardless of its nature, can and should be planned, documented, and executed using the previous planning sheet. So any link can be planned using these sheets, okay? So your link planning sheet and then your link sheet. So this was all now part of the first one there. Plan for all segments beforehand. Right. This is all part of plan for all segments beforehand. Now the second one where we're getting now is hold weekly planning and brainstorm meetings. It's important that you hold brainstorm meetings on a weekly basis. In this weekly meeting, each producer or presenter or anyone involved in the content of the show should come prepared with ideas for the following week's content. So you actually prepare for these meetings. These ideas should come from using the planning sheet previously shown. So your ideas should come from this link planning sheet. So this is where you put down all your ideas and then you bring it to this planning meeting. Ideas and stories can come from a plethora of different sources, okay? For example, obviously a presenter's personal experiences would be a big one. You can get them from books, from stories, from articles on the social media pages, other internet sources, or daily subscriber-based preparation services. You actually get services where you can get info. If we start by looking at these subscriber-based preparation services, these are services that producers or presenters can pay for, and that can be very helpful in collating stories and ideas from radio people. So 2 examples here that I've listed for you is radiowarfare.com, and they introduce their prep services as a way to supercharge your radio station or your show. They offer the latest headlines, stories, showbiz, surveys, music, sport, birthdays, or ideas. They deliver fresh content already edited and laid out. So that's an easy one for you. Or the second one there, Bits and Pieces at fmjock.com, is a prep service from the UK. They describe their offerings as full of topical gags, daily competitions, talkers, phoners, and Facebook prompts to get your show interactive. They also include files with TV highlights. You can search on their app or website for content related to certain topics. If, for example, you do a search for Madonna, the search will return results that include showbiz news and interesting trivia about Madonna. Their content is delivered before 7 o'clock and updates are emailed around 5:30 if there are updates. So almost all of these types of prep services will provide you with a 7-day free trial to see if the services will help you or will be valuable to you as a presenter or a producer. There are a couple of examples that we're going to look at now on page 132 to 136, which are examples of stories and ideas delivered by prep services that cost money. Okay, so these aren't free. If we look at the first one there, example 4C on page 132, it's a subscription service, Daily Chat. Dr. Dave's Ultimate Prep Sheet, so then it gives you the address there, drdavesultimateprep.com, is a subscription service that delivers stories and ideas to your inbox. So it is one of those. The service is called the Daily Chat. There's a couple of ideas to get your planning going. Okay, their ideas are as follows. Number 1, make your Halloween pumpkin last longer. So a topical story for Halloween, obviously in October. Number 2, pearly white teeth is not enough. So it's an interesting and a weird fashion story. Number 3, children and credit cards. So parental and personal finance advice. So 3 different stories. So number 1, making your Halloween pumpkin last longer. Bottom line, tips to help prevent your pumpkin from rotting. That's basically what that story is about. I'm not going to read it in detail for you, but you can go and read it. So then they give you a couple of thought starters on how to start with this prepping. How early do you carve your pumpkins before Halloween? Have you ever created a jack-o'-lantern that didn't even make it until Halloween? Do you go for unique jack-o'-lantern designs or classic ones? Okay, so those are your 3 thought starters that they give you, and they give you the bottom line about what it's about. And then they give you a couple of just hints and things. Okay, second story there, pearly white teeth is not enough. It's a very short story, and then they give you 3 thought starters. The thought starters, thanks anyway. I think I will just stick with boring white teeth over here. Would you try this tooth coloring polish? What shade would you pick? And the third one, could you get away with wearing rainbow teeth at work? Okay, it's quite an interesting story, just a random story for you. Then the third story that they give you is children and credit cards. So they tell you the bottom line here is the do's and don'ts of giving your child a credit card. Then they give you some information about some research, firstly about children owning credit cards. They talk about the child's age. They discuss spending limits, make the advantages and disadvantages clear, and explain the pros and cons. And then they give you thought starters. Do you let your children use your credit card? Have you ever regretted giving your child access to a credit card? What happened? And thirdly, how old do you think someone should be before they have their own credit card? Okay, so this is a good example of a subscription service if you want to go in that route one day. Then there's an example for D, which is a daily subscriber-based prep sheet. Okay, so this is now, the previous one was daily chat stories, okay, and this one is now a prep sheet. And then this was from 2019. So they say today, and then 2 things that happened today. So 30 days to the Rugby World Cup, and then 11 days until CONCACAF. Days, what day is it? Arbor Day, World TB Awareness Day, events, Jacob Zuma to appear at state capture hearings, Gauteng is running out of water, people whose birthdays it was today. Then there was a birthday quiz, so a question about someone who is celebrating their birthday today. South African one-liners. Then there's world one-liners. Then there's a phoner or a textbook or a Facebook post for you that you can just take as is and go and post or mention. Then there's entertainment news where they give you some entertainment about a Gauteng rapper. Then if you turn around to page 136, there's a world puzzle, so they call it Brain Gym. And then there's a survey of the day and 5 things that we learned this week. Okay, so that's your daily subscriber-based prep sheet. So these are just two different types of examples of how you can prep, or of ways of prepping. If you do want to go the route of finding one of these subscriber-based prep services, okay? As much as these prep services are great and would be something that I think everyone can take something out of from time to time, they can also be quite tricky. So it's recommended to never simply copy and read the content sent to you. So don't just copy and paste and go on air and there you have it, okay? It's always important that you understand what you're reading, what you're talking about on air also. Dick Stone, who is a program director at Capital FM East Midlands, warns against simply taking a preparation sheet or any content source and simply regurgitating it on air. So he's got a formula for using content more effectively, okay? It's called the RIP formula from Stone and Geiger, and it's a method of making sure that the content that is being produced from sources other than one's own thoughts share the following characteristics. Okay, so RIP stands for researched, internalized, performed. When we look at the R there for researched, look for material that makes you excited or makes you react emotionally by either laughing, becoming angry, or becoming intrigued. Be sure that the station's audiences will also find it interesting. If they might not find it interesting, don't use it. The I there for internalized. Ensure that the content is personalized. Become emotionally involved when you talk about it. The audience will want to hear what made you react to the specific piece of information. And then P for performed. Finally, when executing the content on air, emphasize the importance of effective performance and delivery. The DJ presenter often only has a limited window of opportunity to deliver their content effectively. Remember that no matter how good the content is, if it's delivered poorly, it becomes poor content. Other very helpful tips and guides that Stone recommends include taking the now researched and internalized content and then asking yourself certain questions regarding the following. So we say ask yourself questions regarding the type of music or the sound effects. Ask yourself questions regarding the number of people who should be involved in the segment. If you need someone to ask a question to get things going, do you need someone to call at the end, so at the kicker, to get people to call in? Or ask yourself certain questions regarding the material. If the material lends itself to an audience quiz, a mock news bulletin, a fake advert, or a humoristic sketch. Then once the content is ready to be performed, Stone recommends rehearsing and then re-editing the content if need be. You don't have to rehearse it out loud. However, be sure to remove any irrelevant information and make the piece accessible. So then we go one step further, and Johnson then provides further tips for content creation. He explains whether the source of content comes from harvesting your life or a show prep service. Anything can turn into content if you mine it properly. Okay. And then he recommends the following techniques to achieve this. So contrast, resolve a conflict or dilemma, seek the extreme, a top 10 list, make it a game, add a guest, discuss personal life and opinions, create unique, original content that only you can perform. Starting with contrast, he speaks of how it is important to use content in a manner that will make your audience feel somewhat conflicted or polarized about the content. So what he says is create contrast to add drama in a storytelling by putting a personality in an awkward or an unexpected situation. Then exaggerate the story to bring out the suspense. So for example, if you find a spider-related story and a show member is scared of spiders, lock them up in a room. Lock him or her up in a room full of spiders. Couple the stunt with an original story to keep it relevant and topical. The next one, resolve a conflict or dilemma. Build up conflict and then resolve the tension. This is used in a lot of TV sitcoms, but works just as well for radio. Number 3 there, seek the extreme. Exaggerate topics, ideas, characters, and personalities as well as listeners. Find the most extreme example of what is being spoken about and get that on air. For example, instead of an ordinary phone topic like what did you eat when you were depressed? Turn it into a quest to find the most anyone has ever eaten in a depressed sitting. Yeah, do you hear that difference? And then top 10 list. Avoid using other people's top 10 lists. Instead, take stories and then create your own top 10 list. This will be a great way to compile a shareable, social media worthy segment. Start with an ordinary phone topic, such as what excuses did you use to get out of jury duty? If you're in the USA, obviously. Then dramatize this by coming up with the show's top 10 excuses to get you out of jury duty. This kind of list, I know that's a USA, so that's an American example, but still, such lists, these types of lists are a great way to bring a presenter's personalities and characters out front. The next one there, make it a game. Everyone loves games. People of all ages love games. That's why games are an important element to add to a presenter's content repertoire. So Johnson highlighted a game that one of his radio clients, K-Love, play. It's a silly game that they play on Fridays, where the DJ or the presenter will play a music instrument and obviously play it poorly. They play a familiar song and then the listeners have to guess what it is. They call it Name That Toot. Then the next one, add a guest. Guests can be really boring on air, okay? We all know that. But sometimes a topic or an idea calls for someone external to add to the storyline. Use guests sparingly and always ask, does having this guest on air add to the entertainment, educational, or engaging nature of the content pieces? If not, don't put them on air. Don't include the guests in your piece. Then the second last one there, discuss personal life and opinions. A great source of content can come from a presenter's own personal life and opinions. According to Johnson, there must be a balance between good and bad personal stories. A good story will deepen the brand character and is not simply only about the presenter. Don't make the listeners feel excluded, okay? So be careful of not making the listeners feel excluded if you're discussing your personal life and opinions. And then the last one there, create unique, original content that only you can perform. The single best source of content is personal experiences and observations from your life. So why use all of these techniques? What is the idea behind them? Using all of the tools and techniques that we've spoken about now can help you transform raw content into great radio content. It's really helpful to use the link planning sheet provided to refine the plan and the contents of a link, okay? What I want you to do for me now is to turn to page 145 in your textbook, because what I want you to do for homework is to complete number 2 there by activity 4A. So you're not going to do number 1, which is show clock for an hour for a breakfast show, because we've done that already. Okay. Number 2, using the execution rule of 4. Okay. We've spoken about that in the previous lesson and this lesson. Choose a story and create a link by using the link planning sheet. Show how you have filled in all parts of the link planning sheet. Where this will be helpful for you is in your formative assessment. Okay, especially in 3.2 of your formative assessment, where you need to create a feature of a South African CHR Top 40 youth station, okay, youth radio station using FABI. Make it bigger and add more layers. What will make it go viral, shareable, and into did you hear that moment? So fill in this thing, and then you can use this for when it comes to you creating a feature. Okay. So if we recap what we looked at in this show, in this lecture, we spoke about show prep and how important show prep is, and we gave you, I gave you a lot of different options for show prep, things that can help you going forward, okay? So there were a lot of guidelines that we spoke about, as in planning for all segments beforehand, holding weekly planning and brainstorming meetings, and that's where we stopped for today. What we're going to be doing in the next lesson is we're going to be talking about plan to insert the characters and personalities into everything you prepare, and lastly, build links with the P2 listener in mind. Okay, so that's what we'll be continuing in the next lesson. And again, your segments, it's the hook, the payoff, the point of view, and what else you can put in there. Okay, so use your link planning sheet, use your link sheet after that. To make sure that your links are concise, that you have prepped for everything before it goes out on air, okay? So once again, every link, regardless of its nature, can and should be planned, documented, and executed using the previous planning sheet. And then remember the RIP formula to ask these questions, okay? To ask if you can use any of these within your link, so music or sound effects, or how many people should be involved. Do you need someone to ask a question to get things going? Do you need someone to call in to help with the kicker? Is there any other material that is needed, okay? And then remember these that we went through now, the contrast, resolve a conflict or dilemma, seek the extreme, your own top 10 list, make it a game, add a guest, discuss personal life and opinions without alienating anyone, create unique original content that only you can perform, And then that brings us to the end of this lecture, which we will continue with, or which we will finish off in the next lecture. And with that, I say goodbye for today.